A poor fisherman risked his life to save a drowning man. The next morning, warships appeared on the horizon. What they wanted left him frozen in fear. A poor fisherman named Elias spent his days battling the sea, casting his worn-out nets in hopes of catching enough to feed his family. Life had never been easy, but he knew the ocean like the back of his hand. One stormy evening, as he was securing his small wooden boat for the night, he heard a desperate cry over the howling wind. Squinting through the rain, he saw a man struggling against the raging waves. Without hesitation, Elias untied his boat, paddled furiously into the storm, and pulled the drowning man aboard. The stranger was barely conscious, dressed in soaked, expensive clothing that didn't belong to any local fisherman. His face was bruised, his breathing ragged. Elias brought him home, wrapped him in dry blankets, and let his wife tend to his wounds. The man barely spoke, only whispering a weak, "Thank you," before exhaustion took him. Elias didn't ask questions. He only knew that a life had been saved. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight touched the water, Elias stepped out of his small hut and froze. Just beyond the shore, an entire fleet of massive warships had anchored near his humble fishing spot. Their dark hulls cut through the morning mist like silent beasts waiting to strike. Before he could even process what was happening, a group of uniformed men disembarked from a sleek black motorboat and marched toward him. Elias's pulse pounded in his ears. Who had he just saved? Elias took an uneasy step back as the uniformed men approached. Their boots crunched against the wet sand, their expressions unreadable beneath the morning sun. The lead officer, a tall man with sharp eyes and a rigid posture, stopped just a few feet away. "Where is he?" the officer demanded, his voice calm but firm. Elias swallowed hard. He didn't know what kind of trouble he had brought to his doorstep, but the presence of warships meant this wasn't ordinary business. Before he could answer, the door to his hut creaked open. The man he had rescued stepped out, still weak but standing tall. His clothes, though borrowed from Elias, couldn't hide the authority in his posture. "Stand down," the rescued man said, his voice carrying over the waves. The soldiers immediately straightened, saluting him. Elias's breath caught. This wasn't just anyone. Whoever he was, he held power. Real power. The lead officer's demeanor changed instantly. "Sir, we've been searching for you all night." The rescued man nodded, then turned to Elias. "This fisherman saved my life. I owe him everything." Elias remained frozen, struggling to grasp what was unfolding before him. The officer looked at Elias with newfound respect. "Do you know who this man is?" Elias shook his head. The officer took a deep breath. "This is Commander Adrian Voss, head of Naval Intelligence. Last night, his transport was sabotaged, and he was thrown overboard. The ones who wanted him dead are still looking for him." A chill ran down Elias's spine. He had unknowingly stepped into a dangerous game. The commander turned to the officer. "Elias and his family are under my protection. Whatever he asks for, see that he gets it." Elias blinked in disbelief. Just yesterday, he was a simple fisherman struggling to survive. Now the most powerful forces of the sea stood before him, ready to grant his every wish. But then, the commander's face darkened. "We're not safe yet. The ones who tried to kill me, they know I'm still alive." Elias's stomach twisted. He had saved a man from drowning, but in doing so, had he put his own family in danger? The weight of the moment settled heavily on Elias. His simple life had been shattered in an instant. The sight of warships anchored near his tiny fishing boat was overwhelming, but the fear in the commander's eyes was even more unsettling. Commander Voss turned to the officer. "We need to leave. Now." The officer nodded and signaled to his men, but before they could move, the faint sound of an approaching engine rumbled in the distance. Elias's heart pounded as he turned toward the horizon. A black speedboat, slicing through the waves at an alarming speed, was heading straight for them. The officer's hand flew to his earpiece. "Unidentified vessel approaching fast. Orders?" A voice crackled in response. "Prepare for engagement. That might be them." Elias felt the ground shift beneath him. Them? The ones who tried to kill Voss? And now they were coming straight toward his home? The soldiers moved quickly, forming a defensive perimeter around the commander. But Voss raised a hand. "Number, hold your fire. If they wanted me dead, they'd have shot by now." Elias watched as the boat came to a sudden stop just offshore. Three men in dark suits stepped onto the sand, their movements careful but deliberate. One of them, an older man with silver hair and piercing eyes, took a step forward. "Commander Voss," he called out, his voice steady. "You don't belong here." Voss's jaw clenched. "Neither do you." The tension was unbearable. Elias felt like an intruder in his own life. Just yesterday, he was fishing under the same sky that now held warships and deadly secrets. The silver-haired man's gaze flickered to Elias. "I assume this fisherman is the one who pulled you out of the water?" Voss didn't answer. He didn't need to. The man sighed, then turned to Elias. "You have no idea what you've done, do you?" Elias said nothing. His instincts screamed at him to run, but his feet wouldn't move. The man exhaled and reached into his coat. A soldier raised his rifle in response, but before anyone could react, the man pulled out, not a gun, but a small leather-bound book. He tossed it at Voss's feet. "Open it." Voss hesitated, then bent down and flipped through the pages. His face turned pale. Elias couldn't see what was written, but whatever it was, it shook the commander to his core. Voss slowly lifted his gaze. "Where did you get this?" The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "From the same people who threw you overboard." A deep silence followed. Elias clenched his fists. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Elias had never felt so powerless. He stood between men who held the weight of nations in their hands, and yet all he had was a small fishing boat and a heart that wouldn't let him turn away. Voss slowly closed the leather-bound book, his hands visibly trembling. This shouldn't exist," the silver-haired man smirked. "And yet, here it is, the truth, written by the very people who betrayed you." Elias couldn't take it anymore. "Enough. I don't care who you are or what this is about. You all brought this chaos to my home, on my land, in my waters. And I deserve to know why." The man turned to him, his expression unreadable. "Fisherman, you saved the life of a man who wasn't meant to live, and now the world will feel the consequences of your kindness." A gust of wind blew across the beach, kicking up sand as Voss took a deep breath. He finally looked at Elias, the weight of years of betrayal and war etched into his face. "You don't understand, Elias. I wasn't just a soldier. I was part of something bigger, something that was never supposed to be exposed." He glanced at the warships in the distance. "They're not here to rescue me. They're here to silence me." The realization hit Elias like a wave. The people who had tried to kill Voss weren't finished. They would come again. And now, because Elias had saved him, they knew exactly where to look. Suddenly, a voice crackled through a nearby soldier's radio. "Orders confirmed. Secure the commander and eliminate all witnesses." Elias felt his blood turn to ice. He was the witness. The silver-haired man shook his head, his voice filled with something almost like regret. "You should have let him drown, fisherman." The soldiers raised their rifles. Voss cursed under his breath, grabbing Elias's arm. "Run!" Elias didn't hesitate. The next moment, gunfire erupted, and chaos swallowed the beach. Sand exploded in the air as bullets tore into the ground. Elias sprinted toward his boat, his lungs burning. He didn't look back, but he heard Voss behind him, covering their escape. They leaped onto the boat, Elias yanking the motor to life as more soldiers poured onto the shore. The warships remained still, watching, waiting. As they sped away, Voss gritted his teeth. "This isn't over. They won't stop hunting me, and now they won't stop hunting you either." Elias stared at the horizon, his simple life as a fisherman gone in an instant. All because he refused to let a man drown. Moral of the story: kindness is powerful, but sometimes it comes with a price. Elias could have ignored the drowning man and continued his quiet life, but his humanity wouldn't let him. The world is full of choices, some easy, some hard. But the ones that define us are the ones where we choose to help, even when it costs us everything. If you found this story gripping, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next powerful tale. What would you have done in Elias's place? Let us know in the comments.